And speaking of
not.
Hayden,
Yes.
Yes.
Hayden's back with our next course.
Ooh, this smells good.
Oh my goodness.
Oh. Beautiful.
There we go.
So, this is autumn, and this is a really cool dish. This is a pork shank ossobuco, and we've done. It's been braised out for hours, and there's leeks and butternut squash. There's some butternut squash chips on top. We decided to garnish with the bone, and we've removed the meat from the bone. The quote that accompanies this dish is from Picasso, and it's the shortest meditation of the evening, but it's perfect. We don't grow older, we grow riper. And, you know, when interpreting this, we were thinking, wow, you know, how are we gonna express that? And as the fruit begins to mature and it falls from the tree, so the flesh falls from the bone. And so that was the inspiration behind this dish.
Very nice. Very
Enjoy.
nice.
Beautiful. Thank you.
He's serious about translating poetry to
Yes.
food.
Very serious.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about the medicalization of the end of life, because you're going to inevitably be dealing with physicians, and Atul Gawande in Being Mortal is quite unsparing in his criticism of doctors in that situation. He says that in general, the way he was taught in medical school, that there's a sense that if someone's dying, that's a failure. And they sort of pull back from that. Geriatricians are paid much less. It's a much less prestigious field than many other areas of medicine. So from the physicians, and I know you're doing some work on this, Tony, so I'd like to hear about that work and how it's being received by doctors, but also for families and people and individuals, when they encounter these attitudes from doctors, aside from maybe getting rid of that doctor and talking to one of you two guys, I mean, what can they do? What can they do when they are faced with this sense that they're being perceived as a failure, or that the doctor only wants to keep them alive and isn't really taking into account their quality of life?
Even in his Frontline, what did he have on Frontline? Atul Gawande's Frontline movie, was
documentary.
it? A documentary. Yeah. He said sometimes doctors need patients to lead. Mm-hmm. That's a quote from him, and that's the work I'm doing. So I'm interested in that and how we can empower people through things like this broadcast to talk among themselves till they're comfortable enough with what they want to know, that they will be the ones to press and ask the doctor and say what they want. So I want to go back to what you said about medicalized. 75% of people in this country, you probably know this statistic, say they want to die at home. That's my experience in my groups. Everyone wants to die at home. Less than a third die at home. A third die in nursing homes where people really don't want to die, and the other third die in hospitals, and half of them die in intensive care. So how will we change that? I think I just want to empower people that they have to way upstream go on living fully, but imagine how they want to die, and if they want to die at home, learn what their resources are. People don't know what hospice is. They don't know what palliative care is until there's a crisis. Somehow we have to, so that's what we're doing here tonight. We're getting the word out there to people so they know these words way ahead of time, and then they can initiate those conversations.
Kat, do you counsel people in how to deal with doctors? And
Yes.
And what are the common things you encounter, and what kind of advice can you give them to maybe allow you to lead rather than have the doctor lead, as Trudy suggested?
And Tony and I are really eager to your answer.
Yes.
Well, you are already doing it right by listening, but I can't remember the statistic, but someone has done a study about how much a physician actually listens during an appointment, usually a 10-minute appointment, if that. It's pretty bad. So, and we're taught not to question authorities, even about mundane stuff. We're taught to just take whatever they hand out. So early on, when you're interviewing a physician, when you start with a physician, I would find out what kind of a doctor you have on your hands at first. And if you haven't done that yet, start now with your doctor. If they're
Honestly,
not a
they
listener.
don't have more than 10 minutes often, though.
No, I'm not criticizing the
no, I
amount
know.
of time they have, but the amount of time they spend actually listening to the patient, who is going to be the one that will lead them to the answers.
I'm just advocating for a change in the coding so that they can get more time with the patients
that
if
would
they
be the
want to
best.
listen, so they have the time
That
to
would be the
listen.
best. My
You're-
personal physician actually changed his whole way of working so that he would have half-hour and hour
Right.
appointments.
They
Doing
need
direct
that.
primary care. Yeah. You mentioned the idea of having patients lead, and I had one of those light bulb over the head moments as a new physician. Elderly gentleman in his 90s came in with brisk bleeding, and his son was with him. And his son said, "So what are we going to do, doc?" And I immediately started talking about the diagnostic workup we would do and where that might lead. And he stopped me and did it politely. I didn't feel like he was being rude. He said, whoa, doc. Before we get into that, shouldn't we talk about what our goals are here? And it was one of those moments that I went, that's what I'm supposed to say. I thought I was a progressive, open-minded, patient-centered physician, but it stopped me in my tracks, and it really made me stop to rethink. I immediately made a number of assumptions about what their goals were without clarifying them, and I may have been on the right track, but I might not have been. And so we had that conversation, and we were able to do what we needed to do, but it was led by the patient and his son, who was his spokesperson, as opposed to me leading it. And that's the way it ought to be.
Yeah.
Well, the one political question I'll ask this evening is the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, changing this equation at all when it comes to people at the end of life?
So I think it's the beginning of thinking about ways for us as a society to pay for the medical care for seriously ill people that will help shift how this money gets used. Because, in cancer care, here's the deal. If I can manage to give a patient one less dose of chemotherapy, one dose less, that one dose probably will pay for all the end-of-life care they would ever need and more. They could probably get 24/7 care for the price of that. And yet it's
But
the
it's
way the
not
payment
billable.
structures are
Yeah.
set up. That's not what's happening now.
Can't
But this is clearly in the midst of a big phase shift right now. And so I think you're going to see a lot more about that. And this kind of discussion is what helps people realize that getting really terrific end-of-life care isn't really about a matter of giving up things. It's actually a matter of making sure we match the treatments that people get to what they really want.
One of the worst phrases in healthcare is there's nothing more we can do. Because what Tony is describing takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of people. It's not nothing. Talk to a hospice nurse at the end of a long day and say, did you do nothing? No, I worked hard to help these people in very difficult times. And yet because we have this either or mindset, this either curative mindset or there's nothing more we can do. And if you stop people when they use that language, they will say, of course I know that hospice isn't nothing. But language matters. The words we use in those conversations matter. And when somebody hears there's nothing that we have, they're always going to opt for something. And that something may not be the right solution for their situation at the time. They're going to use the tools they have available, procedures, medications, chemotherapy, and things like that, even if they're not the most appropriate treatments at that time.
Well, we're not quite done eating and drinking.
Oh, we're going to have some more.
Hayden is here with
More food?
the final course of the evening. Hayden?